I think this team, we need to win again. We need to show that last year was not a fluke. We need to, what we need to do better than what we did last season was we definitely need to beat Michigan State. We need to win every game in the regular season without a doubt. I think that would be a huge stepping stone as far as to how can one team 143 be better than team 142.
Hey there, welcome in. Hope you're having a great Wednesday, July the 27th. That was Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara at Big Ten Media Days, getting excited for the upcoming season. That's what the Big Ten Media Days are designed for, to get you pumped for the season. And for Michigan, they start and they hit the practice field a week from today. There was day 2 of the Big Ten Media Days taking place today, and we're going to go over what was said. A couple rivals for the Maize and Blue, their coaches going up to the podium. I watched all of it today, and it's like the same thing yesterday. The narratives, the themes, the things that were talked about with the coaches. Once you hear 14 coaches go up there and talk about, they're all excited about getting it going. It's a new day. They're taking it one day at a time. Everybody's excited for the season, all those kind of things, and just saying it in different ways. But nonetheless, it still gets the blood pumping a little bit, listening to football coaches actually talk about football. And that's what they were doing there in Indianapolis. The Buckeyes, their head coach Ryan Day spoke just a few minutes ago, and I highlighted some of the things that the coach Day had to say. A coach or two before that, Mel Tucker, Michigan State head coach, he also took to the podium today, and I took some notes on what Coach Tucker had to say, and we will get to that. But that the Buckeyes, most of their media made sure that they arrived yesterday in time to ask Jim Harbaugh and the players that Michigan brought along questions about last year's Ohio State game. So we'll talk about that Buckeye focus. We'll start with those Jim Harbaugh quotes and what Harbaugh had to say and how people are reacting to it over the last 24 hours or so. As always, if you are watching this podcast, this digital podcast, and you want to leave a remark on Michigan, and I leave it open for you. You can take on Michigan. You can take on the Big Ten. You can take on college football from any angle that you want. And I get to your responses in real time. That can take place on a Clubhouse where you can get in. You, like Paul, I see is in there. I see Edwin. You can raise your hand and you can call in. Edwin says that he does want to call in. Let's give that a shot. Edwin, you're on Michigan football today, right out of the gate. I don't know if I'm going to be able to figure out if I can hear you or not. What's up, Edwin? I got your little mic there. What's going on, Edwin? I'll work on it. I had it. You had your hand raised and everything. I thought, bam, let's get right to the calls. All right. Stay there, Edwin. If it works, it works. He's going. Okay. So, but you do have that option for you as well. Well, yesterday, Jim Harbaugh talked about goals, name, image, and likeness, approach, and the quarterback competition. There were other things, of course, that he did talk about. But when he talked about Michigan's goals for the upcoming season, you've been around. If you have been around for any length of time, you hear players and coaches at times when they're asked about goals say things such as, yeah, we have goals, but we kind of keep those to ourselves. Yeah, we all have our team goals, but we don't tell anybody else what those are. It's like, okay, you're not going to tell anybody else what their goals are. Jim Harbaugh did not do that. Jim Harbaugh came out and spoke specifically about beating Ohio State. He mentioned beating Michigan State. Of course, Michigan wasn't able to do that last year. They were able to win the Big Ten, and Jim Harbaugh said that was a goal of Michigan again, and he didn't stop there. This time, he mentioned that one of Michigan's goals is to win the national championship. So those are 4 nice goals. Now you can just come out and say you want to win the national championship, because I think all of those things you would reach all those goals, but that's all right. Along the way, it's not like he needed to go up and down the schedule, because if you were going to win the Big Ten, you'd think that it would run the Big Ten championship is going to run through Columbus, and because Michigan hasn't beaten Michigan State for 2 years, that is going to be a big time goal. You can't imagine, although this time last year, we were playing the game like, and I said it myself, I don't see Jim Harbaugh surviving if he would lose to Michigan State. It's a must win. I was declaring a year ago that the Michigan State game, that there was no other way around it, that Michigan had to win that game. Now, you always pull out but what about if Michigan lost that game and won all of their other games along the way, including Ohio State, and then won the Big Ten championship and made it to the college football playoff? And say, you don't think about that part, but it ended up happening. So it's a nice reminder. Do I think that it's a must win this year? Well, how can I say that, since I said it was a must win last year, and it actually wasn't a must win. So, but I would think that if Michigan wanted to win the Big Ten, that Ohio State would be a must win. But you know how it goes. We start now, but it starts about a month or two in. You're already getting where they have the college football, where they have the bowl championship series playoffs. So you see the 4 and then the 6, and everybody's like, well, this team, that team, this team, and there's all kinds of different things that can happen. So you actually don't have to win the Big Ten championship to win the national championship, and you really don't have to beat Michigan State. But all of that, I mean, you get it. Those are nice goals to have. And if you win the national championship, you're a Michigan fan. You look back, you say, hey, it's all right if you didn't achieve all of those other goals. You won the national championship, and there's nothing bigger than that. That would be pretty cool. So Jim Harbaugh spelling out the goals in front of everybody, I thought that was good by the coach. Overall, I graded the coach yesterday up at the podium, and his previous stops in Indianapolis or Chicago in these media days, I haven't always given Jim Harbaugh an A, but I gave him an A yesterday. I like how he presented himself up at the podium and everything that he had to say. So I'm going to say good job by Jim Harbaugh. Now, and a big part of this was name, image, and likeness, because if you go back to the summer when Harbaugh was up at the camp at Ferris State and he was asked about, he had said the transformative over transactional before he was asked about it in Ferris State, but that's where he said it, where it really took off. Everybody was like, whoa, what's he talking about here? Everybody's talking about throwing a bunch of money around, and Jim Harbaugh's talking about Michigan's not transactional. What is he doing? And, for me, I thought, well, maybe Jim Harbaugh's saying that in front of everybody, but behind the scenes, he's saying something different. It didn't seem like it. He doubled down on the old transformational over transactional a little bit later on a podcast, but there is no doubt. I didn't hear anything about, the transactional and transformative in Harbaugh up at the podium. Later on, when he was in a less formal setting still in Lucas Oil Field and all of the reporters gathered around him. I mean, it's still pretty formal. Sometimes you do get, if you're a reporter that went there, like Maize and Blue Review's Brandon Justice, at times you can follow the coach when he is done up on the big stage or the smaller stage, and then off to the side he gives the Michigan contingent of reporters that showed up, sometimes a 5 or 10 minute kind of powwow that they can get their own questions out there that not everybody that is just watching on TV, and it's a benefit, and it helps out the reporters, certainly if you're able to get a extra question or something in there. But I'm not sure if Harbaugh had side sessions down there at Indianapolis. But there's no doubt he thought about his approach and what he was saying about name, image, and likeness. And maybe he was watching this podcast, because I told Jim Harbaugh that, you can't just keep serving that straight like no transactions, transformative. And he didn't. And it was really, can I say it's mad? Well, I'll say uh, it felt masterful to me how he handled it this time and was able to reverse this course, and I think reverse the narrative here when it comes down to Michigan. Zagging while everybody else is zigging on name, image, and likeness. He wasn't talking about they weren't going to be transactional, and he was asked specifically about Ryan Day this summer, who had something to say about $13 million. And Harbaugh, after that, initially, not yesterday, was talking about, and I think it was directed at Ryan Day when he said some of these coaches are talking about salary caps. I think that was directed right at Ryan Day. But he was asked specifically about the $13 million that Ryan Day had talked about this summer. And Harbaugh said, quote, "I think we can do more. I think we could maybe double that at Michigan." Now, that is a great response. Nice job, Harbaugh, talking about name, image, and likeness. And then, this is the Harbaugh that came in and was doing satellite camps. This was the Harbaugh that was doing signing with the stars. This was the Harbaugh that was really thinking about all of the different ways that you can do things off the field that is going to help you as a program, recruiting or otherwise. Because Harbaugh came back when the question was pursued more about name, image, and likeness. Harbaugh wondered why players, not just at Michigan, just as a nice touch, not just talking about his own players, but he said, "Hey, why can't all of the players get money right from the Big Ten, right from the Big Ten media TV deal that's being negotiated right now?" Kevin Warren, the commissioner, he introduced all of the coaches that came up to the podium over the last 2 days. He would go up, Jim Harbaugh, in his seven, come on up. And, then he was off to stage. I would have loved to have just had a Kevin Warren camera. I don't know how much there was some, some of the different coaches right off the bat, very appreciative and giving a shout out and attaboy to Kevin Warren for, his off season and what he was, just recently able to do with expanding the Big Ten and everything else. But I would have loved to have seen Kevin Warren's face when Jim Harbaugh said, "Hey, how about Kevin Warren in this new media deal? How about he cuts in the players with a little name, image, and likeness?" If Kevin Warren would have just been like, he would just sit there. That would have been a nice little side camera. I would have liked to have seen that. So applause for Jim Harbaugh on that. I wasn't applauding him a month or so ago, but it shows you, you can say something. I don't know if he necessarily stuck his foot in his mouth, but it wasn't. If he would have told me what he was going to say, the old transformative over transactional, I said, okay, you can say that, but how about right after that, you make it clear that Michigan's not going to be outbid and that you're still going after the top players and the big fish and all that. He didn't do that, but in the way that he did it today, yesterday, I thought was a master stroke by Jim Harbaugh. Let's get to some of that feedback. It is coming in. Tyler says that Michigan needs to take it to MSU this year. Cannot let Tuck get you 3 straight years. Capitalization on need. Tyler, I think so. I think so too. But, how can I don't know if I can scream or rant and rave about it, because I was in that position just last year where I was over here like, putting my finger down and banging on the table and saying that it was a must win, that you cannot allow Mel Tucker to win the first 2 games in this series, that you cannot, seat the state to him by letting him win 2 games. It would be absolutely disastrous. I thought it would end Jim Harbaugh's a coaching career at Michigan, because I just didn't see any way if Michigan was going to lose to Michigan State, go to 0-2, and then they're going to lose to Ohio State likely again there, that, Jim Harbaugh would be up there in Indianapolis. But as we know, it happened. But yes, I mean, as we're just sitting here, Tyler, yes, I do think that Michigan needs to win that game unless they run the table and beat everybody else and get back to the college football playoff. I'll just say it like that. So, yeah, they need to do it. Otis says he thinks OSU is 10-1 when they play Michigan with a loss at MSU or Penn State. Maybe. I you know what? Thinking about Ohio State losing a game, it can happen. I mean, it's tough to go undefeated. I'll get to what Ryan Day had to say, but I'll give you a little preview. He wasn't happy about just losing 2 games last year. Wasn't happy about not being able to make it to the college football playoff. So, yeah, look, I think Michigan's going to go 11-0 heading into Columbus. So, thinking about Ohio State dropping a game, sure, it can happen. But I would like both teams to be undefeated heading into that game. But do I care if Ohio State loses a game? The answer is no. Tyler saying it's classic Harbaugh. He loves that he flipped that NLI money on the networks, but that ain't ever happening until a CBA is signed. Oh, you're right about that. It was a nice way to throw it on the Big Ten, at the commissioner, at all of this big money that's being thrown out there. And that's really what has changed people's perceptions, myself included. Like, 20 years ago, when 25 years ago, when I started out in sports talk radio, in the inevitable question came up in the offseason, do players need some, should the players get paid? At first, you'd look at some of the scenarios like, how about giving them a stipend? Giving them a little extra money, give them a little stipend. Stipend sounded good to me. I like some of the scenarios where, how about they're able to pocket some money or get these stipends, but they're not really able to cash in until after they're done, after they graduate, and then they get this lump sum, all these kind of different scenarios. But as the money went from, the coaches, which is, astronomical to a lot of us to begin with, thinking about a coach making $1 million or $2 million. But when the coaches started getting $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, $6 million, $7 million, $8 million, $9 million, $10 million, and the TV money, it's not, to say not the players' fault. Everybody, like, football is just, it's king. Everybody's addicted to football. People love football. I love football so much. It's such a great game. It is such and look, I like basketball, I like hockey, and I like baseball, but I like football more than all of those sports combined, probably by 10. I mean, the first couple games, like, they get the week zeros and things like that, games that, you get to, a month or two in that you would never think about watching, man. I was sitting there like, wow, this is awesome. And so, I was reminded, just like everybody else during the pandemic, like, wow, man, you take this away and, but then you get a game and you get the appreciation and everything else. I'm getting a little off the topic here. The point is that it's such a grand game and is so popular and the money is so gigantic. At some point, it's crazy to say that a scholarship to a place like Michigan, where you can get paid your entire education, where other regular students, the other 99% of the student body, they have to take loans out, for the next 5 or 10 years. And then, they got to pay like 5 times the amount. And hopefully that doesn't end up happening. Like, they're able to trim it down, but everybody has those stories and we still see it. But so you would never think so, but it just shows you just how popular the sport is. I think it's going to be, like we say, Kirk Ferentz yesterday was like, he doesn't like the way it's going and everything else. Like, I don't know, Kirk, did you like it when you were getting them, like, when coaches were, making $1 million? That was already, sound like way too much. Now they're going to make $10 million, at some point. All right. Let's get to some more feedback. Otis is coming in strong today. ND is a good game to take the temperature of OSU at home. They'll beat the Irish, but we'll see if their offense has taken a step back. Yeah, I don't know why we would think that Ohio State's offense would, and I don't know why you're saying it, Otis. I don't think that Ohio State's offense has taken a step back. They played. I was down setting up my DVR for the uh, sessions today on the Big Ten Network, and they had the Ohio State Utah Rose Bowl game from last year. The shootout, and they didn't have Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, and the wide receivers that were out there, Smith and Jigba, had like 300 yards, had the Rose Bowl record for yardage. Marvin Harrison Jr. caught 3 touchdowns. I mean, they've got Fleming. It is stacked. I mean, they're up. Like I said this yesterday, and it gets a little bit like people might not want to hear it, but on the Michigan side, they like hearing it. Michigan is absolutely stacked offensively. They look great. They should be one of the better offenses in all the country. They should score over 40 points a game. Meanwhile, Ohio State is the best offense in the country, and they pretty much bring everybody back. And then the places that they don't, like the wide receivers, they got such good guys that you've already seen them out on the field that it is just incredible. The offense is incredible. I'm not saying they can't be beat. They can be beat. But, I'm not thinking about them taking a step back. Maybe a step forward. He's talking about the O-line and the wide receivers. Let's go to Josh. Let's not act like we are above paying players. Paying is the only way to reel in elite recruiting classes. Glad Harbaugh has changed course. Yeah, a lot for me, Josh, and it gets down to semantics, and sometimes when you talk to the fan base, there are some people that they get into ranking ethics, which it's or anybody can do anything they want, and the ranking, the ethics, like Michigan's above ever paying any players, like okay, but it is the way it is right now. Like if I'm promising the very top, if I am promising a top quarterback, that no, I'm not saying like if you like us, we will show up at your door tomorrow with $1 million in cash, which was happening in the past. Maybe not that much money, but 6 figures. But if you say, hey, if you come here, we are promising you the opportunity immediately to make that money. You can say, well, that's cheating. Is that cheating? If I don't know, you get the lawyers down again to the way, like Michigan, and I'm not saying that Michigan cheated, because it's not cheating what they did with, they had a donor step up and pay for all of this these millions of dollars to take trips around the world, and they're going around the state right now. But what's the difference between saying, hey, and I know people say, well, you're not actually just giving them the money straight away, but it's still a promise of something. Like, you are promising a player out there that if they come to Michigan, that they're going to have an extra benefit of being able to, possibly travel the world with all expenses paid. You're going to have all of this money just to travel around the state of Michigan. And that's different than anywhere else. So that's a promise. So it's a thin line, and one that's not being enforced, but I'm not acting like it. Michigan is acting like it. They have to figure out the wording, the promising, and just where they sit, where it comes down with everything. It sounds like they have changed course, and at least that they've sit there and they're saying, look, this is what everybody else is doing. We're at least going to get up to that line a little bit, or however you want to put it. We're dipping our toes in the pool. Some people don't like to hear that. Michigan's going to be above all that. They're going to have a different way of doing things. Okay, maybe they will. Maybe they will. I think that, they found out with a couple big name recruits that, if you're not ready to play ball, then you can be left behind. It's still a long way to go to National Signing Day. There's a lot of big time recruits out there. There's a lot of recruits for the following year, a lot to play out. Yesterday was promising to me for Michigan and name, image, and likeness. Jesse says, after hearing Cade and Harbaugh talk, I feel Cade is definitely the starter all year. You don't bring a backup to media days. Well, that's a good way to lead us to where we're at, because we went with Harbaugh. He talked about the goals. I've just had the picture up of the NLI approach and the quotes that we just talked about. And the third thing that I wanted to mention with Harbaugh was the quarterback competition, Jesse. And I think you're right about bringing Cade to the media days. And here is what Harbaugh had to say about Cade Cunningham. Cade is the starting quarterback. First practice, he'll be with the first team. Eventually, during camp, JJ will get the same opportunity. Now, I read this as the following. Exactly what he said, but I will also add this is exactly, I think, the way it's going to play out in the regular season. When it starts, Cade is going to be the starting quarterback. In the first game, he will be with the first team. Eventually, during the first game, JJ will get the same opportunity. And then it's on from there. That's how I see it. And we can all make our predictions, how it plays out after that. But, does Cade deserve to be the starting quarterback in the first practice with the first team? Yes. Is JJ going to be able to have an opportunity to push him and get an opportunity to run with the ones to see if he can overtake them by week 1? Yes. Can it happen? Probably. It could not. It could happen. And so then it becomes your guess and my guess. I don't think that JJ is going to overtake him in fall camp, but I do think in the first 3 or 4 games that he will. That's how I see it. All right. Feedback is always good. Get that tuck going instead of tuck coming. I like that changing of the phrase. Here's Travis. I didn't like that Harbaugh brought up MSU. Gives them relevancy. I could care less about that game as long as Michigan beats Ohio State and wins the Big Ten. Fair enough, Travis. I'm from, I'll put my position in that there is, I was going to say over 10 years, hell, forever. Michigan's approach has been the approach that you're describing here. Don't even bring them up. Ignore them. Treat them like a little brother. Don't mention them. Give them nothing. And I have not liked that approach. I know that that Michigan State, sits there. They hate that Michigan gets all the publicity in the media. They hate that most of the state of Michigan, they're still fans of Michigan, not of Michigan State. Even when Michigan State, finally, like, when are you going to give us any credit when they had D'Antonio there? They won 1, or they won 2, or then they won 8 out of 10, or whatever it was. I think it was 8 out of 10. And they were still like, give us credit. And Michigan was like, we're never giving you credit. And even Joe Milton, when the pandemic game 2 years ago, when Michigan lost to Michigan State, Mel Tucker's first game, Joe Milton was over there, and they're like, hey, what about this linebacker who had like 1 million tackles for Michigan State? He was great. He was from Ann Arbor. And Joe Milton was like, played the same tune as every Michigan player has played almost through its eternity. He was like, who? I'd never even heard of that guy. Complete disrespect. I think that I'm fine with bringing up Michigan State. I think Michigan should pay and give the utmost attention to Michigan State and Ohio State. They're their 2 biggest rivals. Michigan State's sitting up there eating gunpowder all off season, and all their fans do is talk about getting disrespected, and that's all the players do. And Michigan's always just playing the arrogance card on them. I think it factors in to some of the games. People love coming back at me and telling me that things like that don't matter. And if I think so, I'm stupid. But then I like to point out that the biggest names in the game, they're always using the disrespect card, and they're always using things like that to their benefit. Whether it's Michael Jordan saying things like, and that was something I would remember. Whether it's Draymond Green not getting drafted in the first round. You ever hear Draymond Green on his podcast or get interviewed when they ask him about being drafted in the second round? He names every single player that was picked in the first round before him, and it motivates him. You know who else it motivates? The greatest player to ever play football, Tom Brady. I would not think that Tom Brady would need any extra motivation after all the Super Bowls and everything else. But guess what? Tom Brady's always coming up with something like, that team didn't draft me, and these guys, they use it all the time. So I don't mind. And in fact, I don't know about relevancy, but you better keep Michigan State in mind. They have won 2 in a row. I think Michigan needs to get away from the culture of disrespect for MSU. I can't do anything about the fans. I can only tell you how I feel about it. And I know the players. The players do it and the fans do it. And I don't know how many of the games it cost them or how, but it's factored in. So I'm going to disagree with you on that, Travis. Speaking of disrespect, we're going to get a little bit this when we turn the page and talk a little bit about Ohio State. OJ Jr. reminding everybody that Day thought that they would hang 100 on Michigan. Yes, I do remember that. Travis is excited to hear about the hype for Kenneth Grant. Michigan's future defensive line is in excellent shape. Yeah, I'm excited to hear about any of the young players. I'm excited to hear about like anybody that puts on a Michigan uniform. When you're talking about Kenneth Grant, you're talking about, a nose tackle or, defensive tackle. Can you factor in and can you get some snaps in there? Sure. Like Michigan's got Mozzie Smith and Chris Jenkins. Mozzie Smith, when he was sitting with Dave Revson yesterday with Eric All and Cade Cunningham, was asked about a player that he thinks is going to step up this year. And the first name he mentioned was Chris Jenkins. And that was good to hear. Michigan did bring in a transfer from Central Florida in Cam Good as a defensive tackle, as a nose guard in there. We know that Julius Welshoff is a senior. He hasn't produced a whole lot, but anybody that's heading into their final year, you think that a guy, if he's ever going to contribute, we've seen it plenty of times where guys like that can. So there's 4 guys right there. Iuana, Jadis, who's the other guy that was going to Michigan State and then Michigan flipped him? Rashawn Benny. There's somebody else. I'm as excited about any of those. Somebody's going to step up there. But then you got 2 freshmen in Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Can they figure in and get some snaps? I think it's the fun part. Like, I like playing a tough non-conference opponent myself. And I get that, especially season ticket holders who complain about the non-conference slate. I understand that because I like big games myself. But when you've got a schedule like Michigan has, you got a chance to see Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Those guys should get, 10 snaps, 15 snaps. Can they get in rotation, pass some of those other guys up? Yeah. But, you can be a great defensive. You can end up being a first-round pick in the NFL draft, and you might end up getting redshirted, as a defensive tackle. But, who knows? Maybe. I know that when you get Bruce Feldman, who does the, freaks list, I think that's what it's called, and you mentioned Grant in there, so, maybe he's throwing around cars and, lifting, 700 pounds with one hand. It's all good, with me. I'm here for it too, Travis. Let's see what Tyler says. Joel Klatt thinks Donovan Edwards is a dark horse Big Ten offensive player of the year. Yeah, I'm here for some Donovan Edwards hype. I'm here for it. I saw, I didn't hear him say it. I didn't see it in a, what you would say is a reputable outlet. I saw somebody just putting up a blurb on Facebook, and it was from John Jansen. And John Jansen, I could see him saying something like this, but he was saying that he thinks Donovan Edwards is, a star, and could be the star of the Michigan offense. Those are fine predictions. I mean, we've seen enough of him to think that to jump on the bandwagon, and I'm there. I just happen to think Corum is pretty good too, but maybe Donovan Edwards could be offensive player of the year. It'd be great news for Michigan. Obviously, be great news. A lot of stars there. And could he be a star among the stars? Absolutely. So I think Joel Klatt, that's a nice pick. And if you always just go for the guys that, like, I think Smith and Jigba will be the offensive player of the year. Well, he's the front runner. So sometimes you're looking for somebody else in there, All right, let's go and get some more feedback in there. Cannot ignore them anymore. I think he's talking about Michigan State. KC doesn't know if it's cheating to pay a player at this point. I don't see anything morally wrong. The players are the product. I don't either, KC. I think, getting around the wiggle room of signing bonuses or inducements. The coaches say they don't like it. They say they don't want pay for play and all those things, but it is happening. And it's just like, the NFL does have rules about tampering, but, tampering goes on. Every time, like there's no tampering. And then they're like, hey, now you have a legal tampering period. And then you actually get to like free agency and it gets to 12 o'clock and then you get like a million signings. It's like, wait a second. How did all these contracts come together so fast? Tampering. So, yeah, I don't know how you eliminate it. Good luck in doing it. So there you go. Now State calls me. Yeah, I'll let Michigan State and the name calling. I'll get other people, allow them to go ahead and jump in and all that. Tyler asking, who do we think Michigan's highest draft pick will be this year? Michigan's highest draft pick. Let me think that. Immediately, I'm thinking offense. And so running back is not a position. Does Michigan have a first rounder? Now, J.J. McCarthy, even if he has overtakes Cade McNamara at some point, still has to stay for another year. So it's not going to be a quarterback. Cade McNamara could be eligible to come out and go into the NFL draft. Do I see him being a high draft pick? Eric All at tight end. Tight ends, they get taken normally in the first round? No. So how about on that offensive line? Olawatimi, like he would be a nice candidate, but centers also rare that they are taken in the first round. Zach Zinter, also the same thing in interior offensive lineman. I don't know, Ryan Hayes would be the first name that would come to Mike Morris, Ryan Hayes, and then Cornelius. Again, wide receivers, I don't think so. So I'm going to go with Ryan Hayes and Mike Morris as the first names off the highest draft pick. And if you want to make me pick one, I'll pick Ryan Hayes, who's going to be Michigan's left tackle this year. That would be my prediction about who would be the highest player off the board. Otis is talking about Trevor Keegan, interior offensive lineman. Umazi Smith, defensive tackle. That's a pretty good. I missed on that one. Morris, Mazzi, or Hayes. All right, Mazzi. I'm not gonna steal it from you. That's not a bad pick. Let's get to what some of the coaches said today. We've talked a little bit about Michigan State. I watched Mel Tucker today. There wasn't a whole lot. Mel Tucker wasn't saying anything inflammatory about anything. He was kind of just straightforward, building a culture, chopping the wood. He was asked about Pat Narduzzi. Michigan State, you may remember, beat Pittsburgh in the bowl game, but Michigan State didn't have Kenneth Walker. And Pat Narduzzi did not have his quarterback, who would be drafted by Pittsburgh. And he talked about if he had him, he'd have won the game. And if that's the best of what the Big Ten has to offer, that Pittsburgh would run roughshod, something like that. And, Mel Tucker did a nice job handling that, said he wasn't going to get into hypotheticals regarding Narduzzi. And plus, why would he? Like, Michigan State won the game. Like, that was a little crybaby Narduzzi move there. A lot of chop in the wood talk from Tucker. And then there was the question about Michigan State being transfer portal U. And Tucker said that he looked at recruiting high school players like the draft in the NFL. And that's how Michigan State approaches it, recruiting. They look at the high school players, and that is the draft. And then he looked at the portal like free agency, where you just add to your team. Fair enough. Wasn't that bad of an answer there for Mel Tucker. There was nothing brought up, or Michigan wasn't mentioned at all by Michigan State. However, Ohio State, it was a different story. Ryan Day described his team's offseason as edgy. They've got a new defensive coordinator and a new scheme. He was asked about the expectations for his defense, and he said he expects a top 10 defense. Talked about, like most coaches do when they talk about their defense, stopping the run. But he said he expects a top 10 defense. They were not a top 25. I don't know, were they a top? Where were they? 40 or something last year? They were not a very good defense last year, but he said he expects a top 10 defense. A lot of talk about that opener against Notre Dame. And yeah, everybody's fired up. Even, if you're a college football fan, you're fired up for the opening weekend. You are fired up for the opening night game, Ohio State and Notre Dame. That will be cool. It was pointed out that Ohio State has the most returning production in the Big Ten. I think that, the starters, they didn't specifically say they have the most starters coming back, the most returning production. However, they end up slicing that out. That sounds like a pretty good thing to have if you're a team. He was asked, Day was, about beating the team up north, and he went back and looked at last year and said 11-2 wasn't good enough. And he did talk about not winning the Big Ten championship and not being in the college football playoff, and then they get reminded about it a lot. And so, yeah, they are getting reminded. They're getting reminded a lot about not beating Michigan, and that's what I found with even the media that showed up a day early to make sure that they were going to ask Michigan questions and see if, I don't know if it's stirring the pot or trying to fuel Ohio State or just, whatever it is, if everybody would do this. But if you forgot about last year in Michigan beating Ohio State 42-27, it was brought up a lot yesterday by the Ohio State media. Here is, I put a tweet up from 11 Warriors. This is Ohio State site. And they have Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara saying he was surprised at how out of hand the Wolverines' win over Ohio State was last year. They've got the quote from Cade. I thought the gap was pretty big during the game. That's fine, but they wanted to get to Cade McNamara again, make sure that's going to be fresh in all of the Ohio State fans and players' minds. They continued on because Jim Harbaugh was asked about talking a little smack to Ryan Day. He was asked about their relationship, and Harbaugh said it was professional with Day, and the two were cordial when they were at the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Harbaugh was asked at the end of his news conference. He said no comment when asked if his third base comment was in a reference to Ryan Day. Here's everything for Ohio State. Here's a little news flash. Yes, it was directed right at Ryan Day. It was a shot at Ryan Day walking into a program like Ohio State that was chock full of talent, and instead of having to build it up, he woke up on third base. That was no doubt directed. But what's Harbaugh? Harbaugh won the game. There was no reason that he needed to go back Go back and check the tape, he could have said. He said no comment, which was fine. He handled that perfectly. And yeah, do you get Ohio State like hoping that there's going to be a little like Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher type deal, and everybody was playing nice? Yeah, they play nice now. Wait till they get out on their field. That stuff will end, as it was pointed out here in the chat. It was just the year before that Ryan Day was talking about, we're going to hang 100 on you. Jim Harbaugh was accusing Ohio State of cheating during the pandemic, not following the rules during a global pandemic. Day said, we're going to put 100 up on you. That's good rivalry stuff. And one more from the Ohio State media. Eric All was there. And All said he wasn't surprised by the way the Wolverines beat the Buckeyes last season because of what he saw on film. All is from Ohio, was recruited some by Ohio State, but not offered by OSU. And the quote by All was, quote, never really liked Ohio State. Anyways, never really liked Ohio State anyways. If you didn't know this, I'm going to let you know. And I didn't know this till I took my first trip down to a Michigan-Ohio State game in 1999. And I went out on the town the night before, High Street, I think it's called. Went to a few establishments there and ran into some Ohio State fans. And they quickly, determined, like, what are you doing down here? And, go Bucks. And, I'm like, I'm here, covering the game. And so then they circled around you and they're like, and this is the thing that about Ohio State fans. There is nothing Ohio State hates more than the whole state of Michigan. They love singing the song about how they hate the whole state of Michigan. And if there's another thing that they really hate about the whole state of Michigan, is that Michigan has to, according to them, go into Ohio and has the audacity to take the players from the Buckeye State. There's nothing more of being a sign of being a bigger traitor in an Ohio State fan's mind, is that if you grew up at Ohio State and that you went to Michigan, they hate that so much. They hate that Desmond Howard is from, they hate that Charles Woodson, they hate that Rob Lytle. I mean, you can go down the list of all these great players from Michigan, including those two Heisman Trophy winners. They just hate that, and they love reminding you about how much they hate it. They hate the whole state of Michigan, and they hate players from the state that go to Michigan. Maybe you knew that, but until you go down there in the belly of the beast and actually talk to the Philistines, you don't know. They all sing that same tune. They hate Michigan, the state, and they hate traitors that go to Michigan. They can't stand it. And so when you know that and you're a newspaper or a website, you're going to search out, you're going to be looking for some of those quotes. And you're going to be going to, if you're Eric All and you're from the state of Ohio, and you went to Michigan, you better believe they're going to ask him, see if they're going to get something. Those Buckeye fans are going to hate that. Now, heck, All wasn't even offered by Ohio State. So what can they say? You know what I mean? What can they say? All right, a little bit more feedback. Let's see where we're at when it comes down to feedback. We got some more here. Tyler is looking forward to the opener with the Buckeyes and Fighting Irish. Sure. Josh asking a question. Let's read it off. How do I feel about a 16-team playoff? 10 of the spots go to all Division I conference champs. With the final 6 being at-large bid, every conference gets a shot at the end of the season games as they get intense. Yeah, I don't want spots going to necessarily the MAC winner or other like like the Atlantic 10 or these others. No, I'm not. I think that when they do hatch one, that I would just go with I would give, if you can come up and think you're a legitimate conference, like there are sometimes when Western was there that you'd want to give, Western or a bid. And there was a time, of course, when Cincinnati last year, they got one, they deserved one. But there's a lot of times that the group of five that we're talking about, that you're talking about, there's a lot of time that a group of five champion, eh, they're not the best. But I do like the Cinderella component. I love it in basketball. I don't mind seeing it in football. When you're going to have this many teams, getting some of those teams involved is going to be fine. 16 teams seems pretty wild to me. The 12 teamer seemed too much until they went with, you get a 4-team bye, and then you're going to play those first round games at, the college sites. I like that idea. I do like the idea if you're in a Power 5 conference that you would get an automatic bid, but what's the Power 5 conference going to look like? I mean, what's the Pac-10 going to look like in 2 years if the Big Ten takes both Oregon and Washington? So I got to wait to see how the schools end up and where they all go, and then I can look at it. I think there should be a component of getting those group of five schools involved, but I'm not automatically giving a group of five, at large bids. But let's see how it, ends up. If the Big 12 is able to, heck, the ACC could dissolve. They could all dissolve into, two conferences. And that could be, and then you would go to those BCS standings. So it's a little bit too early to tell and to say that you'd want to give, 10 spots out to the group of five to the group of five, and five to the ones that are in place right now as your Big Five, because I don't know, is the Big 12 and Pac-12 really going to deserve one? We don't know. So if they're ready to put this in place next year, how it sits right now, I would be against the 10 spots, how you have described it. Otis saying if Cade hadn't thrown the interception, the score would have indicated the gap difference in the game. That said, weather and players being sick is the only reason Michigan won, according to the Buckeyes. Yeah, well, I don't know. Ohio State, at some point they're going to lose a game. And Ohio State, they got their ass kicked up front. And when you have a team run the ball down your throat and you get dominated at the line of scrimmage, Ohio State didn't have any excuse in that game. You want to talk about being sick? That's an excuse. You want to talk about it's snowing? That, how much of an excuse? Look, and I know excuses. We all know excuses. None of those excuses. Nobody's listening to any of those excuses from any Ohio State player. Hey, you lost one game, and it's going to happen. Once in a while, you're going to lose a ball game. But yeah, don't make any excuses and go back and, we'll see if you're able to. Like, hell, I didn't like Michigan using the excuses down there in 2016. The refs were a factor, but I don't like people crying about the final play in the spot. It was close, and I thought it was short, but people freak out too much about that myself. Too many excuses. Here's somebody thinking Eric All is going to emerge this year. Yeah, he could. I mean, he's a great player. I mean, his size and speed, you go back and you watch somebody had a camera on the goal line or maybe around the 10-yard line, and they catch All coming across the middle against Penn State when he had the 47-yard touchdown last year. And he's rumbling. I mean, and you can hear his feet just, hitting the And then, going in, it was a power run. It was one of the great plays in Michigan history, and it was captured in awesome time by whoever had that camera. I'd, give them credit if I knew who it was, but it was quite a display of power and speed by a guy at his size. And the one thing about all is that you remember, if you've been following Michigan, is that you would hear the last 2 years. You'd hear things about training camp. You'd ask people and they say, "Oh man, this Eric All, he's something else. This Eric All's turning heads. Eric All's great." And then he just dropped too many passes. And that was it. That was the thing. He dropped too many passes. If Eric All catches the ball, the sky is the limit for him. That's where I'm at. Okay. We will be with you tomorrow. Jim Scarcelli will join us, the former Wolverine. We'll get his thoughts on everything that's transpired this week. You want to know what's Michigan's next move? You're talking on the recruiting front. I talk a lot of recruiting. I try to talk about recruiting every day. I haven't the last 2 days. And yet there's a lot of recruiting going on. If you are following it, Michigan basketball right now, it's interesting that, basketball is kind of taking the center stage. They had a big-time visitor yesterday. They're going to have a big-time visitor this week who's getting ready to make a decision. You want to know what Michigan's next move? We are on top of it at Maize and Blue Review, so you should join up by going to michigan.rivals.com. And guess what? For the next 5 weeks, you get access to premium content for free. 5 weeks. Use the code UVMFree22 at checkout. You can see what it's all about on the Den. Michigan fans just like this, posting all day, all night, talking about Michigan. All right, I do appreciate everybody getting in with the feedback. I love being able to read what you have to say, getting the temperature of Michigan fans. And the last 2 days, it's why they have those media days. You want to have some kind of signal that, football is on its way. And this was it, the media days. And sure, a lot of cliches being thrown around there and everything else, but a week from today, Michigan starts practice. And because they've got 40 days from when they start. So you just back up the calendar and it's September 3. So August the 3rd, that it will be 30 days. I said 40. That a month out that they have fall camp. And you can just look at it being Wednesday, and next Wednesday is August the 3rd. So we are then 5 weeks away today, 1 week away from fall practice starting, and then 5 weeks away from kickoff. So we are here. It feels like it. We'll be here every day talking about the latest in Michigan sports. Thanks for joining us